Please rise for the presentation of the colors. Advance the colors. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Post the colors.
Good afternoon, everyone, and please be seated. On behalf of the University of Findlay, we welcome you to our annual Veterans Day Observance. My name is Samuel Yates, alumnus of the University of Findlay and the president of the Alumni Board of Governors. We are grateful to have you here at the university and want to honor we're grateful to have the University of Findlay faculty, staff, students, as well as our community members, veterans, and their families all joining us today. It is an honor to recognize all those who are currently serving and have served our country. The Veterans Honor Wall is a living tribute that serves as a constant reminder on our campus of the many sacrifices that our servicemen and women make to give us the freedoms that we enjoy today. We are honored to call these veterans Oilers. Today and every day, we thank these veterans for their service and for the many sacrifices they make on behalf of our great country. I would like to take the opportunity to thank Tom Ramsey, leader of the Boy Scouts of America Troop 319 from Findlay, for bringing these scouts as a color guard today and posting the colors for our ceremony. I'd also like to recognize the University of Findlay's President, Dr. Catherine Fell, the University of Findlay Alumni Board of Governors, Ken McIntyre, our Vice President of University Advancement, the staff of University Advancement, students Samantha Atkins, Zachary Zalesnik, and Michaela Holtz, and our keynote speakers, Rodney Cramp and Titus Allen, class of 2002, for their participation in today's program. Immediately following our program, we'll begin reading the more than 700 names on our Veterans Honor Wall. If your schedule allows, please stay and join us for this special tribute. We hope you find this time of honoring and remembering our veterans. I would now like to invite forward Samantha Atkins, a senior English major, to the podium to give the invocation.
If everyone would please bow their heads and pray with me. Father, thank you for this day and the blessing of our university and the great alumni and supporters that we have. Today, we are here to honor those that have served our country and given their lives so that we may stand here and still live in freedom. Father, I do not understand what these service men and women have gone through, but I do know that you call us to love our neighbor, and these men and women here today have shown that through their service. We thank you for not only the over 700 UF alumni who have served in armed forces, but all US veterans around the globe. Thank you so much for giving them the bravery to protect our freedoms. We are proud of what they have done and continue to do. For those who continue to serve through active duty, keep them safe in your care. I ask that you give the families of the servicemen and women peace while their loved ones are away. Father, I also pray that today is not the only day we remember our veterans, active servicemen and women, and those who have lost their lives to protect our freedoms. I ask that you remind the citizens of this country to never forget and always appreciate, respect, and honor those who have made the decision to fight for this country. We thank you for all that you have done in our lives and for this university. We also thank you for your grace and the promise of eternity with you. In Jesus' name, amen. And now at this time, I'd like to introduce Zachary Zalesnik. He is a first-year doctorate of physical therapy student who will be performing the national anthem for us.
Let's all stand and sing. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's
dawn's early light, what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Thank you.
Thank you, Zach. You may be seated. The University of Findlay is proud to host a special event to honor and remember our U.S. military personnel. It is our privilege to support veterans, military students, and their families. We are grateful to be here with you to honor all veterans who came before us, those who stood alongside us, and those who will come after us. I'd like to talk a little bit about the origin of our Wall of Honor, already mentioned. When we were planning the construction of this beautiful building, the Center for Student Life and College of Business, the chairman of the Board of Trustees at that time, Mr. A.R. Carnes, recalled how he had been a student on campus during the Vietnam War. He told us that he always thought something more should have been done for those who served in the military. And we recognized this new building would be a fine location for just such a tribute. With his encouragement, the classes of 1966 and 1976 made gifts for their 40th and 50th anniversaries to fund the creation of this Wall of Honor. Their generosity, along with the continued gifts of many donors, have made this possible and allows us this space each year in November to salute the service and sacrifice of veterans who represent the best of us and the best of America. At this time, Vice President for Advancement at the University, Mr. Ken McIntyre, will introduce our guest speakers for the afternoon. Ken.
I would like to thank all of our veterans and all of our veterans family members and those who have gathered today to memorialize and honor all of our those who have served and those who are currently serving with us. Whenever I think of this event, I always think of a scripture in John 15 where I believe, and I may misquote it a little bit, where it says, greater love has no one than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends. Here at Findlay, we work hard to ensure our mission to equip students for meaningful lives and productive careers. We are witness to that mission in action through our students, faculty, alumni, board members, trustees, community members, friends, and in our veterans. This honor wall is an evergreen wall, which means it'll continue to honor veterans for years and years to come. If you know someone who is a student, was a student of Findlay University or Findlay College, if you will get their name to us, we will make sure that they find a place of honor on our wall. The first year when we put this wall up, we started with 400 names of those we knew who had served. We are now up to over 700. We want to keep this wonderful tradition going. At this time, it is my privilege to introduce to you Rodney Cramp and Titus Allen, who will speak to us about the need to care for and support our veterans after they are out of the service. I first met these two men when I volunteered at an activity called Silent Watch, downtown Findlay. Out in front of the Hancock County Courthouse. I showed up. I heard that they were honoring veterans down there, so I showed up and I did my 22 minutes of a silent watch. Rodney and Titus, who are financial advisors with Allen Cramp Wealth Management Firm, have spent decades helping area residents with their retirement planning and providing security for their futures. Rodney has been married to his wife Kate for over 30 years. They have one daughter, a son, and 3 grandchildren. Titus, who graduated from the University of Findlay with his MBA in 2002, lives with his wife Angie and their 2 children. They are here today to share with us the outstanding work of Silent Watch and also to remember a friend of theirs and mine, Gavin Smith. Please welcome to the podium, Rodney and Titus.
Thank you, and just want to say thank you for coming. He made mention of a verse that I was going to mention, so I'll just leave with that. And also, if at any moment I have to tap out, Rod will save me. Some of this is hard, and I'd like to thank every vet in the room, veteran, that Rod and I deeply appreciate, respect your service, selfless acts, and willing to put it all on the line for this country. Every person that has that, as the verse says, greater love hath no man than this, if he willing to lay his life down for his friends. And every one of them knows that when they sign that line. So again, for the ones that are here, thank you for your service. And to the ones that cannot be here, our respect, appreciation, and admiration. When you're willing to sacrifice that much for the country, that should, I'm going to say some very obvious things, some blinding flash of the obvious. When you're willing to give that much, it is incumbent on society to put you in a different echelon in society. You have earned it. We have these freedoms because off the backs of our veterans. And is America flawed? Sure. But to diminish America is to diminish the service, work, sacrifice of not just those vets, but of their families. Everybody's in a different journey, different place on how they understand things in life. And so this part came a little late to me. My grandfather was a World War II vet, and at the time didn't know PTSD too well, but now I get it. I think society is that way too. With Gavin, which we'll get to shortly, he had some of those struggles. But getting to know Gavin, I get to understand that sometimes the war isn't as bad there than it is actually when they come home. They fight their biggest battles when they come back, and the sacrifice continues. And I don't know that everybody understands that unless you see it or if you've lived it. So getting back, to me it is incumbent on the society that every member of the society understand what those people are willing to do, what it should mean for how we treat them, not just when they're there, but when they come back, and then that should be just a different section of society, that they've earned it. So Rod and I have a few things that we learned from Gavin, and we try every time we get up to reiterate these two things. One, God is good. You know, Gavin sacrificed, in the end, all of it, and he did it for things that are good. We're a blessed country. God has given us a lot, and a lot of that was off of the backs of, again, the vets, the greatest generation, being one of them. But as those hard times pass, like World War I and World War II, and then Vietnam, and as we get further away from those hard times, you know, hard times produce strong people produce good times produce weak people, and then we repeat the process. So my challenge to the younger ones here, college age, that might be thinking about signing up and giving those kinds of sacrifices to the country, say to you, appreciate it. It's a worthy and admirable thing. And again, we should, as a society, put you in a different category. With Gavin, Rod and I got to know him when we hired him. And it was apparent from day one, as you got to know him, that he was struggling with things. And over time, I got to understand what his life was like. He would always be the first one to tell people to get involved. And I think because of those great generations in the past have made things so well, and the mousetrap was so good for so long, we expect that the mousetrap's just going to keep working. I think those days are over, and it's going to take the involvement of everybody and to keep what we have. So I know if Gavin was here, he would strongly encourage everyone to get involved in whatever way that God has given you to do so, whether that's coaching basketball or PTA, or as he did, putting wreaths on the service members' graves at Christmas, mentoring, and it was through his encouragement that got me involved in things like the board for CASA and the Christian Clearinghouse and Hope House. Those are direct results of his influence. Gavin was the type of guy who would literally give you the shirt off his back. He's the guy that volunteers to help move you. I know all of us have friends that suddenly they're your friends when they got to move, right? But he would actually show up without being asked. He'd always go the extra mile. When we first hired him, I knew he was going to do really well when we had a Christmas party and he picked up the tab unasked. And I knew he had a bright future ahead of him. He always thought of other people. Forgive me. I think there's two types of trauma, and you know, a lot of times we understand the psychological trauma that these people do have to go through when they're in conflict, but what they have to deal with coming back is both psychological and physical, and that's one of the reasons why we picked up the Silent Watch and 22 a day. And by that I mean, today we know that the human brain was not meant to take those kind of concussion shots, whether you're firing a 50 cal like Gavin did on the back of a Humvee, and over repetition that creates micro tears in the brain, which is permanent damage. And so that's part of what we're trying to help the physical side, and of course the psychological side. If you're on the other end of that 50 cal, you're seeing what you're doing and you have to deal with that. So again, for those in the room, I say thank you that are vets. Very quickly, Gavin was an outstanding person. We're almost to the day on the anniversary for when we lost him. It was the day before Vets, 3 years back. And he did, right after 9/11, tell you what kind of guy he was, he signed up immediately. As soon as 9/11 hit, he was one of those guys that went right to the recruiting office and signed up. They sent him on 3 tours. He did his duty, and when he came back, he had some of the PTSD issues. He struggled with those. He fought well on those, and but it was obvious they were there. Rod and I did what we could, spent hours on the phone talking him through some tough times. And just when we thought he was at his best, we lost him. So I would just encourage everybody, and Rod will give you some ideas on how you can do it, but just, you know, it's one of those things, if you see something, say something, reach out to those men and women. A lot of times we don't know what they're going through. I could never relate to what Gavin was going through, but I knew it was hard, and I could try and point him in the right directions. You always wonder if you could have done more. And so I just encourage those of you that do happen to be in contact with vets that have come back and they may be struggling, do everything you can to let them know they're loved, to let them know they're people they can talk to, and resources. And I'll just finish there. Once again, thank you to the vets, thank you to their families, thank you to those that are pondering doing this with your lives. And again, as a society, we should put you in a different category. We should take care of you long after the battle's over. And I'll let Rod come up. Thank you for your time.
I too would like to thank everybody that has came today, plus special thanks to all of our vets that are serving, that have served, and for the ones that have given their lives, and to all their families that had to go through that sacrifice as well. I have seen some familiar faces out here that have stood at our silent watch, and thank you for doing that. Yeah, our big charge was, we were sitting around one day after Gavin had passed, and we were trying to figure out in the office, you know, what should we do? We were all kind of shell-shocked from ourselves, and a lot of different ideas came up, and Leah Cook in our office came up with an idea that she had seen on the internet called the Silent Watch, which I'll explain a little bit more about that coming up, but we all thought that would be a great idea to do this in honor of Gavin, since he had such a special place in our heart. We just wanted to do something that was important for the veterans and Gavin, and give that back to the community and our support for our vets, because our vets are very important to us and we fully support them. So we came up with the Silent Watch. I don't know if anybody's heard, I know there's a few people probably heard about the Silent Watch, but hopefully we can give you some insight on what Silent Watch is and why we do it, which you've already heard the why. It was primarily Gavin and the military that served for us. So a little bit about that with some bullet points. The Silent Watch was founded in 2009 by Master Sergeant Tim Chandler and Michelle Hawks. Their mission was to make awareness for suicides and to educate the public on what was going on out there as far as how they could raise funds for these military people that are at risk of committing suicide. There's treatments out there for them. There's, I'm sure, all kinds of therapy that they can go through, but one treatment that's kind of part of the whole Silent Watch is called SBG, which is a Delgate-Langdon block. It's a procedure that when they donate money to these Silent Watches that are all over the count, or not all over, they are all over Ohio, which they hope to have them in all 88 counties, but still working on that. But these SGBs are a procedure that helps diminish some of the effects of PTSD, depression, anxiety, sleeplessness, and all the side effects of war and what it does to our veterans. These are challenges that they go through on a daily basis. We had people that came up to the Silent Watch that were in their 50s, 60s, and 70s, and they still go through this to this day, a lot of them were sharing their stories, which, as Ty mentioned, the war still follows them, and their service still follows them. So these treatments help them get through that. And so what the Silent Watch does is every day there's 22 veterans that take their lives. So as we were staying around, we decided we wanted to get involved with that. So in September, we have one coming up. We've done them usually in September. Last September we had one. The year before in September we had them again to honor Gavin. But our next one's going to be September 5th, 2024. And what it kind of entails is that you come up, there's a casket presented there. We have a service ceremony prior to that, and then we start the whole day of standing in silence for 22 minutes each and every hour. There'll be changes, people come up and stand. It's amazing how some of these people come up and they walk up to the casket in actual cadence and march up and salute. But it's pretty impressive, and to hear all the stories that these men and women tell you, it's kind of mind-blowing, and I can see tears that have still affect people. But our whole thing is, throughout the day, these people are standing and stories are being told, and by the end of the day, it's 5 o'clock, and we have another ceremony of taking the casket out, and our veterans and vets stand in line as we march the casket out to the hearse, and the hearse goes on down the road, and everybody's just kind of standing there still trying to figure out what has happened to them. So, but the Silent Watch, I think, helps people heal, helps them remember, and again, helps some of them get more treatment that they definitely need. If you've got more questions on that, Leah's in the back, Andy Sterling's in the back. Andy's team supported us in Silent Watch too. He kind of marches out the casket, and they do cadence and they do the taps, and he's a big part of this as well. So get involved. It's a good thing to serve our vets. Thank you and have a great day.
Thank you, Titus Serrani, for sharing that inspiring story. Next, it's my pleasure to introduce Michaela Holtz. Michaela is a junior criminal justice student and a member of the University of Findlay's band. Her father, Mr. John Holtz, is a U.S. Army veteran who served as an E-5 sergeant, tank commander, and a squad leader from 1982 to 1988. Michaela will now play taps to honor our military heroes. Please stand. Thank you, Michaela. Before we begin with the reading of the honor roll, please welcome back Zachary Zalesnik to the podium to lead us in God Bless America.
Let's sing. God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above. From the mountains to the prairies, to the ocean, oceans wide with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home. Thank you.
Thank you, Zachary. Please be seated. Thank you all for joining us today and sharing in this special time to honor our veterans. The University of Findlay is grateful for the sacrifices that our military personnel and their families make to maintain our nation's safety and to uphold our constitutional rights. It is an honor to recognize each of you today. This concludes our formal ceremony. We will conduct a reading of the Veterans Honor Roll in a moment. We hope that you can stay. Thank you. Benjamin Abraham, April Adams, Richard Albert, Connie Algie, Nicole Almond, Blake Amasquita, Jack Ammons, Russell Ammons, Ronald Amrine, Elwood Amsler, Robert Anderson, Howard Andrews, Amanda Appy, Charles Artizone, Paul Armbrecht, Bradley Arnold, Stephen Ari, Dakota Artman, Nicholas Adisu Boafo, Ralph Askham, Richard Oxler, Donald Badschroeder, Brett Vaughn, Dennis Baker, Michael Banky, Doran Barfield, Robert Barger, Katrina Barna, Curtis Barth, Jamie Bash, Walter Basil, Lester Baum, George Bayer, Theodore Bayless, Ronald Beach, Thomas Beal, Barry Beal, Jason Beckford, Dwight Beery, Roy Belcher, Thomas Bell, Craig Benson, John Berg, Richard Berg, Joe Bibler, Nathan Bingham, Victor Binkley, Charles Bish, Richard Bishop, Alec Bissell, Chad Blair, John Bildy, John Bodie, Gordon Bulmer, Arthur Bookwalter, Logan Bosley, David Bossio, Randall Bullion, Michael Baltwell.
Don Bauer, David Bowling, Judith Boyle, Gloria Bracken, Timothy Bradford, Matthew Brand, Kenneth Brandt, Ralph Bresler, James Bryce, Che Brindle, David Brooks, Jack Brown, Andrew Bryant, Francis Brisgott, Lynn Buchanan, William Buck, Timothy Buckland, Jacqueline Bucksbaum, Matthew Bueller, Joseph Bullman, Jessica Bunch, Howard Bergen, Christopher Burke, Michael Burke, Bruce Burkett, Emily Burris, Arthur Burton, James Burton, Aaron Butler, Stacy Caldwell, Graydon Callahan, Gina Campbell, Kathleen Cannon, Paul Capel, Raymond Carey, Robert Carl, Robert Carpenter, Howard Carpenter, Joseph Carell, Sierra Carter, George Chapin, Kai Chang, Casey Chilbert, Kenneth Chisholm, James Chrisman, Brent Christie, Scott Simonello, John Sindrick, Philip Capriani, Charles Clapper, Travis Clark, Robert Clark, Rachel Coverly, Joel Coughlin, Alfonso Cohill, Neil Cole, Ralph Cole, Erwin Cole, Gerald Collins.
William Conway, Chelsea Concha, Sandra Conley, R. Brandt Conley, Nolan Connell, Lucy Clausen Conley, Ernest Cook, Jeffrey Cooper, Paul Corbin, Caitlin Correa, Larry Kramer, Justin Kramer, Richard Crawfus, Jean Crawford, Megan Cross, Richard Crowder, Jack Croy, Martin Cruz, Doris Cuba, Douglas Cuddy, Jamel Cudbreath, Paul Cutler, Terry Couples, Lynn Couples, Layla Deba, Peter Daub, John Davison, Richard Davis, Jonathan Davis, Paula Davis, Paul Davis, Richard Deerdorf, Richard Delapina, Derek DeLong, Earl DeLong, Frank Demura, Amber Diaz, Stephen Dickerson, Thomas Deach, Kevin Dills, Neil Deshawn, Kenneth Dowling, Robert Drake, Kyle Dresbach, Homer Donathan, Robert Dunbar, John Duncan, Dean Duras, Joe Dye, Matthew Dyer, Raman Dyer, Carl Dyer, Loring Ebersol, Reeve Ekman, Julia Edelbrock, Ralph Eddy, Heather Edmondson, Levi Edwards, Orville Ide.
Emily Elser, Donald Elswick, Albert Endrick, Thomas Erb, William Evans, Benjamin Evenbeck, Vicky Falgren, James Farrison, Thomas Farley, Charles Farling, Brian Farr, Anthony Federico, Edward Feitner, Brian Feldman, John Ferguson, Ava Marie Fields, Miller Fink, Stephen Finley, Rachel Finn, Garrett Firestein, Alec Fissel, Murray Fitzgerald, Thomas Fitzpatrick, Raymond Flanagan, Christopher Fleshman, Pauline Fleming, Wayne Flick, Jason Florence, Caroline Flores, Brian Flores, Dwayne Folk, Bernard Fortna, Dennis Foster, Mark Fox, Joshua Fox, Aaron Fox, Lancelot Francioni, Daniel Francioni, Dominic Frito, Debo Freed, Joshua Frisbee, Corey Fritsch, Joseph Freidinger, James Fry, Victor Fuentes, Robin Folks, Jeannie Gaines, Roger Gardner, Megan Gardner, Harold Gardner, Shanda Gatlin, William Geeman, James Gearing, Jessica Geiger Hayes, Merle Gebhardt, Robert Gebhardt, James Garrick, Eunice Gilbert, and Dale Gillespie.
Raquel Gianta, Lauren Glover, Fred Golke, Robert Gooding, Jeffrey Gores, Wayne Gosnell, Brett Graham, Cedric Granger, Leonard Graves, Fred Green, Chad Griffith, John Grimm, David Gross, Don Grubb, Alexander Gutierrez, Earl Guy, Derek Giori, Kermit Hanley, Norman Hanley, Sheldon Hall, Cody Hancock, Kristen Harder, James Harkey, William Harlan, William Harrell, Stephen Harris, James Hartman, Misty Hartnett, John Hassan, James Howe, Robert Hawsey, Jacob Hay, Jennifer Hayes, Shane Haynes, Edward Hazel, Linda Heckman, Conrad Heydrich, William Heinstein, Paul Helms, Lance Henderson, Donald Henninger, George Henry, David Hensley, Russell Hepler, Scott Hepler, Alan Hepler, George Hess, Austin Hickel, William Hicks, Andrew Heister, Charles Hilburn, Hannah Hildebrand, Erica Hill, Chad Hill, James Hill, Richard Hill, Richard Hillebrand, Richard Hills, James Hindle.
David Hindle, Carl Hinton, Roy Hinton, Russell Hippensteel, Douglas Hodges, Joseph Hoffman, Logan Hoffman, Maurice Hoffman, Jack Holcomb, Rebecca Holstein, Dennis Holzinger, Walter Homan, Della Hans, Michael Hoops, Wayne Hossafras, Michael Hostler, John Hostler, Michael Householder, John Houston, Jeffrey Howard, Byron Howe, Frederick Howes, Michael Hrinsey, Mark Hudson, Michaela Huffman, Mary Catherine Hughes, Barry Hull, Charles Hunter, Jamie Huntington, Edison Huston, Jeremy Jackson, Raymond Jacobs, Richard James, Jerry Jenkins, Brian Jennings, William Johannesson, Junius Johnson, Andrew Johnson, Eric Johnston, Joshua Jones, Clarence Jones, James Judd, Harry Canuck, William Keaton, David Kay, Ryan Keck, Zachary Keaton, James Kefalonitis, Ted Kerr, Rhonda Karras, George Keller, Eugene Keller, Elvin Keller, Leland Keller, Ronald Kelly, Nicole Kelly, Joseph Kendall, Michael Kennard, James Kidd.
Stephen Kimiha, Martin Kisla, James Clausing, Gordon Kleiner, Hugh Kleinhens, Emery Klinish, Larry Klingler, Philomena Klingzing, Zakaya Klingzing, Sammy Coach, Steve Korb, Richard Cross, Joshua Creelzis, Laverne Kramer, Laura Kruger, Richard Kruger, Thomas Krugman, Timothy Lafferty, Brian Lambert, William Lanning, Lawrence Lape, William Lape, Charles Lashinsky, Delbert Lotta, Larry Lager, William Lair, Dudley Lee, Daniel Leaks, Haley Leaks, Clifford Lee, Donald LaFavor, Michael Lemoynes, Dennis Langle, Frank Leslie, Ronald Lewis, Keith Lewis, Frederick Lewis, Ned Linder, Aaron Little, David Long, Greg Longworth, George Love, Daryl Loveridge, Jeffrey Locksterman, James Loy, Daniel Ludwig, Glenn Lukiski, Robert Lundy, James Lund, Guy Lyon, Jonathan Mass, Richard Magsig, Arlo Mans, Myral Malloy, Wendell Marvin, Chad Marzik, Scott Massell, Jacob Maurer, David Mangus.
August Mazza, Alexis McBee, Matthew McBrien, Derek McCartney, Kathleen McCarty, Laura McLean Belts, Britton McClintock, Emily McClure, Thomas McDonald, Virgil McDougall, Cassandra McDowell, John McDowell, Milo McDowell, David McGew, David McGuire, Timothy McIntyre, Jack McMichael, Martin McMullen, Michael McPherson, Harold Meter, Donald Mears, Derek Meredith, Casey Messenger, Kyla Meyer, Douglas Michelle, John Mickley, Irvin Miles, Brittany Miller, Isaiah Miller, David Miller, James Miller, Merrill Mursky, Jacob Moening, Wayne Moening, Marvin Monroe, Jacqueline Moore, Christopher Moore, Charles Moore, Kevin Moore, Joe Moorhead, John Mosher, John Moss, Walter Mueller, Anthony Muniz, Amanda Munoz, Gabriel Munoz, Wayne Murray, Larry Muser, James Muson, Joseph Meyer, Abram Myers, Christopher Myers, Stephen Nathanson, Aaron Nazario, Rachel Neff, Eugene Niederheiser, John Nidley, Bennett Nelson, Kristen Newton.
Douglas Nichols, Wayne Nichols, Max Niebel, Thomas Niedermeyer, James Neiswander, Charles Nickerbu, Michael Noble, Jason Noonan, Terry Nordyke, Gary Norris, Sarah Novotny, Morris Now, Deo O'Boy, Robert O'Brien, Maru Acrospoma Calderon, Ryan Odendahl, Luke Olney, Justin Olson, Sean Oman, Robert Osman, Matthew Otto, Teresa Overman, Corey Overmeyer, Chaz Pacholke, Miguel Padron, Stacy Palmer, John Park, Tom Parker, James Parks, Arthur Patterson, Aaron Pauley, Brielle Pierce, David Pelfrey, Antonio Perez, Daniel Perry, Don Peterman, John Peterson, Christopher Peterson, J. Dwayne Phillip, Wallace Phillips, Ellery Pippins, Stephanie Pitts, Dean Pullman, Curtis Pullman, Samuel Pontillo, Michael Poole, Vern Poor, George Powell, Eugene Powell, Arthur Poynton, Robert Pratt, Charles Presley, George Preston, Vernon Preston, Arnold Price, H. Ray Prickett, Kyle Pritz, Richard Pritz, Charles Purcell.
Robert Purdy, Robert Quick, Donald Rader, Carl Rader, Richard Rader, Alexander Rado, Edward Railing, Brandon Ramsey, Dale Rauch, Clinton Ravencraft, Frederick Ravencraft, Elizabeth Ray, Aaron Ray, James Rayford, Diego Rail, Stephen Rail, George Reamsnyder, Robert Redmond, James Redmond, Benjamin Reeder, Lee Reeg, Richard Ream, Elizabeth Reese, Larry Reeg, Alexander Reener, Rodney Reeder, Scott Renfro, Roger Rhodes, Robert Rice, Lucas Richard, Harry Richards, Adam Richmond, Max Ridge, Robert Ridge, John Riley, Carla Rice, Glenn Roberts, Austin Roberts, Franklin Rhoda Brow, Christopher Rodriguez, Anthony Rodriguez, Drew Rogers, Roger Romer, Ray Romero, James Romick, William Romstad, Chris Roper, Lisa Rosen, Carlisle Roser, Paige Roseman, Franklin Royer, Edna Rudolph, Charlotte Russell, Marvin Russell, Norman Russell, Charles Russell, John Russell, David Ryan, Brad Salisbury.
Russell Sanders, Van Saul, Tommy Sawin, Maurice Sayer, Kevin Skasny, Michael Skasny, Richard Schaefer, Caitlin Such, Dustin Schlong, Roy Schmuck, Gary Schneider, Joseph Schroeder, Gregory Schultz, Lawrence Scobie, George Scott, Sarah Scott, Stephanie Seaholm, Herman Cersei Lunkett, Franklin Searfoss, Joshua Seedorf, Donald Schaefer, Stacy Sharp, Teresa Shatton, Cecil Shawley, Daniel Schaefer, Eric Schindler, Gary Shirley, Wayne Shively, Raymond Shoemaker, Haley Shook, Austin Shull, Fremont Shull, Nicholas Shunn, Robert Silver, Todd Skaggs, Carl Sleesman, Franklin Sleesman, Merle Sleesman, Leanne Silva, James Slough, Tyler Slusser, John Smilo, Rodney Smith, Antoinette Smith, Todd Smith, James Snyder, George Snyder, John Snyder, Edwin Snyder, Edwin Sorensen, Julio Souza, John Sparks, Jericho Spielman, James Spittler, Sean Spradlin, Barry Sprink, Roger Statler, Shannon Standish, Kenneth Stauffer.
Robert Steele, Bruce Stefanik, Daniel Steltel, Andrew Sterling, Jerry Stevenson, Kevin Stewart, John Stimmel, Matthew Stombaugh, Kenneth Stute, Carl Stow, Robert Stram, Richard Straight, Lee Stratton, Ross Strower, Caitlin Streaker, Chloe Stringham, Michael Streichel, Thomas Sudamak, Jeffrey Sullivan, Larry Surratt, Cletus Swigard, Ralph Switzer, Joseph Svetpentenery, Jerry Seismanowitz, Christopher Tabor, Charles Tank, William Tatham, Timothy Taylor, Jacqueline Taylor, Thomas Taylor, Theodore Taylor, Daniel Teal, Robert Thoma, Donald Thomas, Floyd Thomas, Robert Thomas, Cameron Thompson, James Thompson, Michael Tithe, Alan Tobin, Harold Todd, Aaron Tong, Stephen Tonsberg, Robert Trask, Kristen Troutwine, Howard Trost Miller, Allison Trutt, Thomas Trutt, Jonathan Toulis, Glenn Tusing, George Tuttle, Mary Jo Ursulitz, Raymond Van Gutten, Richard Van Horn, Don Van Sant, Richard Van Scoit, Joel Velez, Luke Venice, Gregory Villisack. Robert Vincent, Amber Vinning, Jack Voller, Chad Van Dran, Owen Wagner, Michael Wagner, Raymond Walzak, Claude Waller, Gary Ward, Edwin Ward, Lindsay Warner, Jessica Warren, Susan Waters, Joshua Weber, David Wedding, LaDonna Wire, David Weising, Joseph Welch, Wayne Welty, Darren Wenzel, Kenneth West, Charles West, Chad West, Ryan Westenbarger, Kai Weston, Howard Wilch, Ora Wilkins, Rochelle Wilkinson, Jeffrey Williams, Patrick Williams, Devin Willits, Kelly Wilson, Bradley Wilson, Mark Wilson, Greg Wilson, Albendia Wimbush Sherrod, Charles Wynn, Wayne Wittenmeyer, Richard Wolgamuth, David Wolgamuth, Ronald Worley, Travis Womer, James Woodward, Angela Woolbright, Leanne Woolley, Kenneth Woomer, Dominic Worthy, Augusta May Watt, Karis Wright, David Yates, Richard Yoki, William Yoder, Robert Yoder, Joseph Young, Preston Zachrich, James Zaglin, Derek Sanders, Donald Zeisler, Deborah Zimmerman.
Thank you, everyone, for staying. That concludes a reading of the names from the Veterans Wall. If you'd like, there's some refreshments over here to my right, and thank you and have a good night.